At the height of the Cold War, it wasn't the North Koreans the Americans lived in fear of. It was nuclear attack by the Soviet Union. But recently disclosed documents show that perhaps the United States had more to fear closer to home, revealing that it accidentally dropped bombs on its own soil. In a moment, we'll be speaking to the author of a new book which explores these revelations, including hundreds of close calls involving missiles, which could have changed the course of history forever. Released at the height of the Cuban Missile Crisis, Stanley Kubrick's Dr. Strangelove was the ultimate Cold War satire.
Hey, what about Major Kong?
What would happen if the United States and Russia were involved in an accidental nuclear attack? What if it were the fault of an unhinged US general? Its fictional lampooning of America's military might was critically acclaimed, but in reality, the Soviet threat for 1960s America was no laughing matter. In the 1950s, US Strategic Air Command began to carry nuclear bombs. It marked a sea change in the risk of accidental nuclear detonation. But until now, the extent of these near misses was unknown. Newly declassified material shows that there were at least 1,200 significant incidents involving American nuclear weapons recorded between 1950 and 1968.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Just 3 days after John F. Kennedy's inaugural speech in 1961, one of the most serious of these accidents occurred. A B-52 bomber very nearly detonated an atomic bomb over North Carolina. It had started to leak fuel, and as this animation shows, as the plane began to break apart, one of the bombs deployed its parachute and fell to Earth. The device was 260 times more powerful than the one which wiped out Hiroshima.
The city of Hiroshima lies prostrate after the withering blast which wiped out 53,000 of its population.
And there was just one safety device left which prevented a catastrophe affecting millions. 30 years on, the apocalyptic mood of the Cold War is a distant memory. But here in the United Kingdom, the British Trident submarine remains at sea, waiting for orders to fire its nuclear weapons. Over the next 4 years, Britain faces fundamental questions about replacing Trident. Perhaps most important of all, this question: do the British people face a greater possibility of being harmed by their own nuclear weapons through a mistake than by a surprise attack? We're joined by the investigative journalist Eric Schlosser, whose new book, Command and Control, explores the past and present dangers of nuclear weapons. And that's really the point. What you're really saying is these are extraordinarily dangerous devices, and that at least 1,200 times in America and other times here, we have come perilously close to killing ourselves.
These are extremely complex machines, nuclear weapons, and they're the most dangerous machines that have ever been invented. Throughout the Cold War, the United States and Great Britain denied there was any possibility of an accidental nuclear detonation. They denied that nuclear weapons could be used without proper authorization, as in Dr. Strangelove. That simply wasn't true. And so my book is an attempt to look at how these weapons were controlled, what measures were taken to make sure they didn't go off by accident, make sure they weren't stolen, make sure they couldn't be used by one of our own personnel without permission. And it was always an enormous exertion to maintain this control.
I haven't read the whole book, but I've seen bits in which a man drops a sort of 9-pound bolt down the side of a missile, which then leads to a leak. The thing nearly explodes.
Yeah.
Then there's the amazing North Carolina situation in which the only thing which saved it was the nuclear trigger failed to go off.
Yeah, the central narrative of the book is a weapons accident in Damascus, Arkansas, that I retell in a minute-by-minute way. And it involved the most powerful nuclear warhead that the United States ever put on a missile. This one warhead was 3 times more powerful than all the bombs used by all the armies in the Second World War combined, including both atomic bombs. This was in Damascus, Arkansas in 1980. Could have incinerated the whole state. Governor Clinton was there. Chelsea Clinton was only a year old. In the North Carolina accident that you had the recreation of, one safety switch prevented the detonation of this hydrogen bomb. A firing signal had been sent when the bomb hit the ground. That safety switch was later found to be defective in more than 30 cases, and was eventually replaced.
It's not unique to Britain. It's not unique to America. I mean, in Britain happened something like it happened at Lakenheath.
Now, through the Freedom of Information Act, I gained many, many reports on American accidents and on some British accidents. And the British government has been even more secretive about the accidents that occurred here. One was at Lakenheath in 1956. A B-47 bomber crashed into a bunker full of nuclear weapons. There was a large fire.
Are we safe now?
The Trident missile, which is the principal nuclear weapon that Great Britain has some safety issues that were revealed in a report to Congress more than 20 years ago. So the weapons themselves are safer, but this weapon system, the Trident, does have some issues. It's unusual for a missile in that the warheads are not on top of the missile as they traditionally are. They surround the third stage rocket engine. And that rocket engine has a propellant, a fuel, that explodes very easily if it's dropped. So I hope in Scotland that they're very careful when they're loading and unloading the missiles.
Well, I would like to devote a whole program to this and much more. I'm sure you have started some sort of a debate. Thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Thanks for having me.